We are live, Your Honor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Good evening. The meeting of the Newark City Council will come to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Colleagues, we were going to issue a proclamation for Affordable Housing Month. Eden Housing was not able to make it this evening to accept the proclamation, but as you may know, they're going to be doing a groundbreaking at their affordable senior project tomorrow, 79 affordable senior housing units. So I thought we would go ahead and issue the proclamation to them at that location. So the first item is roll call, and I see all members of the council are here this evening. Thank you. We will start off with a proclamation designating May 19 through May 25 as Public Works Week. If I could have folks from Public Works come on up. I'm going to introduce folks to Acting City Engineer Kango. Did I pronounce that wrong? Kanko, thank you. Our Chief Building Official, Mr. Matt Farrell. Our Environmental Services Manager, Jim Scanlon, and our Facility Supervisor, Mr. Perez, and of course our Public Works Director, Mr. Soren Fougeau. I was told, Mayor, when you clap, you need to stand away from the podium because it gets really loud. So. But this is National Public Works Week, and when you think of infrastructure, and you think of the things that are important to communities, safe roads, safe sidewalks, walkable sidewalks, bike lanes, all the things that make transit easier for residents, safer for residents, you think of your Public Works Department. A lot of these folks really become unknown because the work that they do, you just don't appreciate it every day. You just take it for granted when you see that pothole. And these are the folks that take care of those issues on a day-to-day basis. The building division, making sure that we live in safe buildings, that the construction that we approve is all permitted and inspected and safe. And of course, environmental services, making sure that anything we do within this community is environmentally friendly and environmentally safe. So a fabulous group of individuals and a fabulous department. So we're pleased to recognize Public Works services in our community as an integral part of our citizens' everyday lives. So this is proclamation number 1918. Whereas the support of an understanding and informed citizenry is vital to the efficient operation of public works systems and programs such as water, sewers, streets, highways, public buildings, parks, landscaping, and equipment maintenance. And whereas the health, safety, and comfort of this community greatly depends on these facilities and services, whereas the quality and effectiveness of these facilities, as well as their planning, design, and construction is virtually dependent upon the efforts and skills of public works officials. Now, therefore, I, Michael Hannon, along with my colleagues on the Newark City Council, proclaim the week as Public Works Week and ask the community to recognize the contributions of which public works officials make every day to our health, safety, comfort, and quality of life better. So let's recognize the quality of our public works, and I'll present this proclamation to the director, Mr. Soren Fougeau. Mr. Fougeau.
Just a few short words. I think the mayor said it all. We have 4 great divisions in Public Works, and folks are here representing each of those divisions. The Building Inspection Division, Engineering Division, Maintenance Division, and our newest division just a few years ago, a one-person division, Environmental Services. As the mayor said, Public Works covers everything from preparing for a State of the City address on Thornton Avenue to issuing building permits, managing our stormwater program, and designing and constructing projects all over the city. So we have a 42-person member department, growing every day as the city grows. And we just have a great group of folks, and appreciate Mayor and Council for acknowledging Public Works Week and come out and celebrate with us.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you.
These next two proclamations are equally as important. If I could have representatives from the fire department come forward to accept the proclamation for National Emergency Medical Services Week. These folks become more and more important to me as I get older. This is National Emergency Medical Services Week, Proclamation 1917, whereas emergency medical services are vital public services, whereas the members of the Alameda County Fire Department are dedicated to providing exceptional, life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, whereas emergency medical service providers are dedicated to saving lives and limiting suffering, often under challenging circumstances, which often require personal sacrifice and risk. Whereas emergency medical services teams engage in specialized training and continuing dedication and education to enhance their life-saving skills. Whereas our community benefits on a daily basis from the knowledge and skills of these highly trained individuals. Now, therefore, I, Michael Hannon, the mayor of Newark, along with my council colleagues, proclaim National Emergency Services Week, May 19 through May 25, and thank all emergency personnel for their dedication and professionalism. You know, in all honesty, we could declare National Emergency Medical Services all year long, because every day these dedicated individuals and the folks that work in our fire department save lives. There's no more important responsibility than making sure that emergency medical folks respond in a timely manner, because every minute matters. And it's a tough job. It's a grueling job. These folks are trained to do it. They're professional in what they do, and we're proud to have a partnership with Alameda County in that regard. Chief, may I present this proclamation to you, please? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. It's an honor to accept this on behalf of the true heroes here that do the work day in and day out. Mayor Hannon nailed it, took pretty much everything I was going to say. But truly, I always like to remind everybody, call early, call often. Whether you think it's legitimate or not, early intervention is the key. And then secondly, we offer hands-only CPR training. Take advantage of those opportunities. We can't be everywhere every time that something happens as much as we'd like to. So we like to prepare the community to intervene as best they can. So look for those opportunities, get a hold of the city, or get a hold of Alameda County Fire Department for offerings. Thanks.
Just want to share a real life example about why the chief says that any call to 911 counts and is important. I had an aunt back in the 80s who had an asthma attack. And if you have asthma or have an asthma attack, you recognize every breath is difficult. She thought she could make it to the hospital to get the necessary treatment. Unfortunately, she passed away before she ever got there. But a call to 911 with emergency response, responding in a minute or two or three, undoubtedly would have saved her life. So if you find yourself in distress, you see someone in distress, call 911. I'd rather have us make calls that turn out to be unnecessary than to not make that call and find that tragedy affects us, our family, or our neighbors. So please make those calls. The last proclamation that we'll be issuing tonight is for the National Police Week. And could I ask representatives from the police department to come forward? Nice to see you. There's no safer place in the city of Newark than right here and right now. This is National Police Week, and again, as I said about the fire department, it should be National Police Year because of the dedication that these men and women provide to our community. Similarly, when we call 911, whether it's in response to an active crime situation or something that we observe going on in our community, these are the folks that are going to respond, and they're going to respond in a timely manner. What I love about our police department is not only the fact that they are extremely responsive, but just their professionalism. You know, where other cities and communities are dealing with issues as they involve their police departments, we don't have those issues here. We support, this council 100% supports our police officers. I want to take a moment to introduce, for those of you that have not met, our new police chief, Chief Jonathan Arguello. Whereas Congress and the President of the United States have designated May 15th as Police Officers Memorial Day and the week in which May 15 falls as National Police Week, whereas the members of the Newark Police Department play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of the citizens of the city of Newark. I'll pause here for just a moment, not just the citizens of Newark, but all residents of Newark. When it comes to life safety and public safety, immigration status and things of that nature are not important. What's important is ensuring that we respond when we receive those calls. Whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the duties, responsibilities, hazards, and sacrifices of their law enforcement agency, and that members of our law enforcement agency recognize their duty to serve the public of the community by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression. Whereas the Newark Police Department remains dedicated in serving the community and continues to receive high approval ratings from the public, including last fall when a scientific survey was conducted by a third-party consultant that reflected a positive assessment. Whereas the men and women of the Newark Police Department unceasingly provide a vital public service. Now, therefore, I, Michael Hannon, proclaim May 12 through May 18, 2024 as National Police Week in the city of Newark in honor of the law enforcement officers, past and present, who have rendered a dedicated service to the community, and to further proclaim May 15, 2024 as Peace Officer Memorial Day in honor of those law enforcement officers who, through their courageous deeds, have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to their community or have become disabled in the performance of their duty. So it's my honor, Chief, to recognize this as National Police Week. And on top of that, I just want to take one moment to share that the Newark Optimist Club, as recently as yesterday, named Newark Police Officer Trevor Damewood as our Police Officer of the Year, and he was recognized for that. So, Chief, outstanding job. Officer Damewood, outstanding job, and I am proud on behalf of my colleagues to present to you, Chief, this proclamation.
First off, I'd just like to thank all the community residents that are out here just to recognize this, make this a special day for our staff, as well as our city leaders for taking the time during a council meeting. I know it's a busy, impacted schedule most of the time, and you're taking some of your precious moments with us. Really, for me, it's our staff day in and day out that do this. They're the ones that run towards danger when others aren't able to. They're the ones that defend those folks that aren't able to protect themselves. Really, some have made the ultimate sacrifice, a lot of times friends and family members of our officers and our staff. That's why it's important that this week happened. I had the opportunity last year to be in Washington, D.C. During National Police Week and go to the memorial ceremony, and there was nothing as impactful for that as in my career to see that. and the thousands of people that descend on Washington, D.C. To pay their respects. There's over 23,000 officers who have lost their lives and are honored there every year. We actually attended our Alameda County Peace Officer Memorial last week, which is on a local basis. And again, our honor guard goes and pays the respect. So it's something we do every year. And we appreciate that our firefighter friends are here, our public works folks are here, that everybody celebrates the professionalism that's done by all our staff, but takes a moment to think about those somber things that do impact our folks. Really, like I was saying, they're the epitome of, to me, is what is a guardian of democracy. Really, that's their key role, and protect everyone equally and fairly. So they're the folks that respond to calls. I no longer do, and really they're our heroes. So thank you. I will point out that I called the shift in when I saw how many firefighters were here.
Challenge accepted. Now, I don't know who to call. If fire and PD go after each other, who do I call? The next item on the agenda is under a presentation. We're going to receive a presentation from the Union Sanitary District. Paul Eldridge is here. Ms. Vork, any preliminary comments?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. Paul, please.
All right. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. That was going to be a tough act to follow. Public Works, police, and fire, and then sewers. So we believe no less important, but certainly not as exciting as the other proclamations. So with that, I'd like to first of all say thank you very much for this opportunity to do this presentation. We try to do this every 2 years. And talking with staff before the meeting, we realized that this is the first in-person presentation I've done since before the pandemic. And I believe the last one I did in person was with Newark. So that was at the old city hall or city council chambers. And the last time I did this, it was virtual. So it's nice to see all of you in person. It's nice to be in your new building. Beautiful, by the way, very nicely done. So with that, we'll jump into the presentation. Some of this is going to be a bit familiar for those who have seen the presentation before. I'll try to go over it fairly quickly. And then, of course, there'll be some time at the end for any questions. So who am I? I'm Paul Eldridge. I'm the general manager at Union Sanitary District. And we provide wastewater collection, treatment, and disposal services for the cities of Newark, Fremont, and Union City. We were established in 1918. The service area is about 60 square miles. The population is about 343,000 residents. And we have independently elected board of directors. Your very own Pat Kite, which is here with us this evening, representing Newark, Anjali Lothy, Tom Hanley, Jennifer Toy representing Fremont, and Manny Fernandez representing Union City. So some statistics about the district, some district profile information. About 839 miles of pipe that we are responsible for operating and maintaining. We have 7 pump stations and a 33-acre treatment plant. We discharge treated secondary effluent to the deep waters of San Francisco Bay. Currently, we have about 147 full-time employees. Our fiscal year budget for this year is $162 million, of which the bulk of that is a fairly robust capital improvement program, which I'll cover in a little bit more detail later on. We treat currently about 24 million gallons a day. It's about 8.8 billion gallons annually. The treatment plant can treat up to 33 million gallons average dry weather. We generate a lot of solids, or I should say all of you generate a lot of solids that we treat at the treatment plant. It's about 20,000 wet tons that we beneficially reuse annually. And what we mean by beneficially reuse is we take it and we use it as fertilizer on farms, and we recycle it as much as we can. And then we recycle about 365 million gallons at the treatment plant that we use for plant process water. We have about 3,000 business connections, 121,000 total service connections. Interestingly enough, as we were doing these presentations over the years, one of the questions that we would get asked is, how many manholes does the district have in the service area? Which we sort of thought was a strange question. Out of everything we do, why do you want to know how many manholes we have? So we capitulated and we ended up putting it in the presentation. We have 17,497 manholes approximately. And we have 81 permitted industries in the service area. And what a permitted industry is, it is a company or a manufacturing facility that discharges hazardous waste that we need to have a discharge permit that we manage with that permitted industry so they don't put anything to the sewer system that could damage the sewer system or the treatment plant. Examples of permitted industries is Tesla Motors, Lam Research, Western Digital, and so forth and so on. In my experience, 81 permitted industries for a district of the size is actually quite robust and quite a bit, very large. So a couple of things that I would like to highlight during the presentation. One is trenchless repair process, and it's somewhat appropriate that this is, you were celebrating Public Works Week earlier, because one of the things that I'm sure that drives your Public Works Department crazy and the Public Works Departments of the other cities is when we need to go in and repair a sewer line and we need to dig the street up. Not only does it compromise the integrity of the street, but there's also traffic implications, and it's just generally disruptive for the residents and the Public Works folks. So a technique that we have been using for a while and have recently expanded the capabilities is our trenchless repair process. And basically what that means is we will identify a pipe that is aged, cracked, and generally needs some upgrading. The old-fashioned method is you would dig through the street, dig the pipe up, put a new one in, and bury it again. The process that we're using now is we will identify the pipe that needs to be replaced, and that we will then insert a resin-saturated tube into the existing sewer line. We'll expand it using air, and then the resin will cure, and eventually you have a brand new pipe inside a pipe. And it's very cost effective. We don't have to tear the street up, and we can repair more lineal footage of pipe annually for the same cost than it would cost to do the open cut. Doesn't mean it completely precludes having to get into the streets occasionally. We do. Sometimes the pipe is beyond the capabilities of using this method to repair it, or the size of it precludes it, or there's some other mitigating factor. We used to be able to do about 6-foot lengths 10 years ago, and with the training and investment in the right equipment, we're able to do up to 100-foot lengths, and up to a diameter of about 12 to 16 inches. Anything larger than that or longer than that, we will contract it out for a contractor that specializes in this type of work. And here are some pictures of USD's crews preparing and utilizing this trenchless technology. On the left, they're rolling out a sock, if you will. It's we call it, kind of looks like a tube sock, but the material is more of like a Kevlar type material. And then they're pouring in the resin into the sock, and then they put it down into the manhole. They pull it taut, pump it full of air, it cures. And then if need be, we will send a robotic cutter, basically a remote control car that's got a robotic cutting arm, to go reestablish all the laterals, because as we pull this pipe through, it will block the laterals, and we have to put the laterals back in service. Otherwise, someone's going to have a very bad evening. We have extensive outreach activities. We go out to, right now, 5th grade classes and do a presentation on not only wastewater, but we also do stormwater as well. And then we also attend community events and career fairs and things of that nature, just trying to let folks know what it is we do, why it's so important, We don't get a lot of attention unless things go horribly wrong, so we like to go out there and try to promote the work that we're doing, absent any negative press. So some trends in the wastewater industry having to do with a topic that you may have all heard about in the news over the last 2 years is algal blooms in the San Francisco Bay. Last summer and the summer before that, there were algal blooms that took place in the bay. The picture to the right gives you an idea of the scale and the scope of this algal bloom. Historically, the bay's been naturally resilient to algal blooms and nutrients in the water bodies have been a nationwide concern for quite some time. And the thought is, well, why are we worried about nutrients when we're talking about algal blooms? Well, an algal bloom, think of nutrients as fertilizer, and an algal bloom is an aquatic plant, and you mix the two, and it's not necessarily the cause of the algal bloom, but it causes it to proliferate more than maybe it would have if the nutrients were not in the bay. So most treatment plants that were constructed or upgraded during the Clean Water Act of the 1970s were not designed to remove nutrients. So most of the treatment plants that discharge in the bay, the nutrients just pass right through. And one of the questions that we get frequently is, well, where do these nutrients come from? And I would say that we are all producers of nutrients on a daily basis. And like I said, the treatment plants were not originally designed to remove them. So there's been a lot of attention given to the San Francisco Bay recently in that the natural resiliency that the bay has had over the years to nutrients seems to be waning. And there's a host of reasons why this is. The clarity of the water is improving in that more sunlight can penetrate the water, which means that it can cause these algal blooms to grow faster. Before, when the water was cloudy, sunlight couldn't penetrate it as much. You just didn't have the outbreak of the blooms. And there's other contributing factors, which I won't go into a lot of detail, but happy to answer questions later. So as I mentioned, this has been a significant topic of discussion, both in the Bay Area and in the wastewater community. Like I said, all Bay Area treatment facilities clean wastewater to a robust standard, but the nutrients remain. And nutrients are regulated via a watershed permit that is administered by the San Francisco Regional Water Quality Control Board by means of what we call a watershed permit. And we're currently operating under the second watershed permit, and a third watershed permit is in draft form and being reviewed and will be considered by the regional board in June of this year. And in that third permit, the regional board is saying, we believe that we need to put a limit on nutrients because we're worried about the health of the bay. And so this is the first time that there will be a nutrient limit that all of the 37 wastewater agencies that discharge to the bay will have to adhere to. So in some ways, that's a good thing. We definitely don't want to have a negative impact on the bay. The challenge, as I'll explain in a little bit more detail, is the scale and the scope of the improvements required to do the nutrient removal, and ultimately the cost. The cost for the 37 wastewater agencies that would be required over the next 10 years to do nutrient improvements at the treatment plant is currently estimated between 11 and 16 billion with a B. And that is expenses that would ultimately need to be passed on to the ratepayers because these requirements are not coming with any or very little state and federal assistance.
Geez, that's a surprise.
I know, we're expecting more stringent regulations in this third watershed permit, and it is something that, in the regional board's credit, they have telegraphed over the last several years that this is an ongoing concern. This will be an issue. It's something that we believe we'll have to deal with at some point in the future. So what does that mean for Union Sanitary District? Back in 2015, the district started doing a very high-level overview of its infrastructure and doing some master planning. And the conclusion was some of the infrastructure at Union Sanitary District was old, it was functionally obsolete, it was falling apart, it needed to be replaced, or we were limited on capacity for a host of reasons. And it was decided that we needed to upgrade the infrastructure just so we could ensure an ongoing, safe and reliable treatment capacity to service the service area in all of the cities. At that time, however, it was identified that if the district went just a little bit further and spent a little bit more money, that we could start doing nutrient reduction with these improvements. And we ended up dubbing the program the ETSU program, which just stands for the Enhanced Treatment and Site Upgrade Overview. The current cost estimate for this program is about $509 million. And the construction will be nonstop. It'll take 7 to 10 years, and we began construction in 2022. So we are in the midst of this already. When we complete this program, it will reduce our nutrients by about 50%. So it may not meet the permit requirements that the regional board is currently contemplating, but it will get us a lot closer than many other wastewater agencies in the Bay Area. And the map in front of you gives you an outline of the different phases of the ETSU program. Phase 1A is what's currently under construction. We're in design of 1B. And then the last phase is 1C. And it's a fairly significant undertaking. We are having to operate the plant as we construct it. The analogies that are used is maintaining a plane while it's flying, changing the oil on a car, driving down the freeway. But that is true because the operations continue 24/7, and the parts of the plant that need the most upgrades are the most critical and that we cannot take out of service. Here are some pictures of some of the construction underway. Let me go back one slide. Phase 1A, the campus building, one of the separate evaluations the district was doing was looking at our administration, operations, and maintenance buildings, and some of which dated back, they were 40 plus years old. As we were evaluating those buildings, it was determined that the buildings needed to be upgraded. They did not meet current seismic code. They had other structural issues. One severely leaked, and the structural members were starting to corrode. And as we got into the evaluation of those buildings, we realized that trying to upgrade all 3 of the buildings was going to be very cost prohibitive. And then we started evaluating what if we combined all 3 buildings into one and built a new building. Surprisingly enough, it was significantly more cost effective to build a new building, tear down the old ones, than to try to retrofit. And then as it turns out, the buildings in question just happened to be in the middle of phase 1B. So the building evaluation was done before we looked at the wastewater infrastructure, and it coincided that we needed to move the campus building or the buildings out of the way. And so the campus building is being built, and we're hoping to move in early in 2025. And it's my understanding the same contractor that built your building is building our building. So here's a picture of what we call the campus building. It's underway. Here's the aeration basins, another portion of phase 1A where that's currently being built. And half of the tanks remaining in operation while the other half is being retrofitted. So again, it's just the work is slow and a bit meticulous because of those activities. So the funding, I'm happy to say that the project is fully funded by a combination of the cash on hand. The district was very fortunate that we were able to secure inexpensive financing from the EPA called the WIFIA loan. And very recently, we were able to secure a $100 million loan from the state revolving fund loan. We feel very fortunate that we were able to get this financing. Without that, it would have made this program much more difficult. And the rate structure that the district currently has in place took all of these programs into consideration and is already programmed into the rates that the customers are paying. Some of the other things that USD is doing is we're trying to optimize our energy resiliency to minimize and manage our costs. As I'm sure you can imagine, a treatment plant is a heavy power user. Our total power cost in FY23 was about $2.3 million. And that's even with us generating 75% of our own power needs. So I'm sure you can imagine what our power bill would look like if we weren't generating our own power. And we generate our own power by a combination of, right now we have solar, and we also have what we call cogen engines. One of the byproducts of our treatment process is what we call biogas or methane. We collect that methane, we clean it, we run it through a generator and generate 75% of our power needs. But our power costs continue to go up. I'm sure you read in the paper that PG&E has done several fairly significant rate increases this year. I believe they just did another one yesterday that looks like it's only going to impact residential customers, but it's a matter of time before it probably impacts industrial and commercial customers. And our power costs alone went up almost 11% year over year. So it's a fairly significant number. That coupled with our chemical costs and equipment costs, everything's just going up significantly with the inflation that we've seen in the last few years. So we are looking at options where we can generate more of our own electricity. From a cost savings perspective, it's a combination of more solar, perhaps some battery storage, so we can store the battery, or store the energy in the battery that we're generating during the day and utilizing at night, or to offset our peak demand, or expanding our cogen footprint. And we have space for one more engine. And then everyone's favorite slide is, how do our rates compare to everybody else's? We are at about the 17.6 percentile, and this data is from October of last year. So it's a bit outdated. Several of the agencies that are on this list are either in the process of doing rate increases or already have done a rate increase. So I know everyone would prefer that the rate be zero, but we do take our fiduciary responsibilities very seriously and do everything we possibly can to keep the rates as low as possible, while maintaining the infrastructure and keeping that over-the-horizon viewpoint so we don't surprise ratepayers with large increases down the road in the event we have some infrastructure needs. That's all I have for you this evening. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to come present, and happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Great. Madam Clerk, this is a presentation. Do I need to open up to the public for questions, comments? Thank you. Colleagues, questions, comments? Councilmember Bucci.
Thank you. Good evening, Paul. I want to talk to you about Thornton Avenue. I know there's been a lot of work going on out there over the last year, and we have been taking a beating from residents about when we're going to get that paved. And you guys have a pipe main project that's going on out there, and I'm going to tell you, because I've been leaning on our city manager and Public Works pretty hard, and this was one of the answers I was given, okay? You mentioned the work on Thornton Ave is yet to commence with their main renewal project on Thornton between Cedar and Cherry. Is this stuff going to happen? Do you guys have work going on Thornton? Are we? You have a lot going on right now, and I know we got ACWD out there as well, but we need everybody to kind of clean up on the work they're doing out there, because it doesn't make sense for us to pave when stuff's going on.
I apologize, off the top of my head, I don't know if we have work going on Thornton.
I know, Soren. I know it's ACWD as well. I know.
So,
Okay.
yeah, off the top of my head, I don't know if we have a sewer project on Thornton Avenue, but I know we work closely with the Public Works staff to try to minimize any impacts, and I can go back and
Okay.
see if
I
we
would
do
love
have
to
work.
make sure that that's cleaned up as soon as possible, just because we're leaning on ACWD, because we're getting leaned on, and we need to take care of Thornton,
Certainly.
right? So we're trying to get this done. ACWD isn't going to start until 2026, which I find completely ridiculous. So I will say this. I have been out to the USD plant quite a bit, and I've worked with your staff on a number of projects in my personal life. And when it comes to the rates and things, I think that you guys do an excellent job of keeping rates low by doing a lot of things in-house. ACWD has a problem with constantly raising the rates every chance they get. And I think a lot of that has to do with they don't have a real maintenance team the way you guys do, and that they have to farm a lot of that work out at a much higher price. So kudos to you guys, because I've worked with a lot of the people over there, and you have some of the best. So that's great. We just want to, this project out here is it's a huge headache for us. So, but you guys, you do great work. So I appreciate that, and please pass that along.
I will. Thank you,
All right, thank
Councilman.
you.
Other comments, questions? Councilmember Jorgens.
Yeah, I want to say that I've also been out to your facility out there, and it's an impressive facility. A lot of work is being done in-house, and I think that I agree a lot of that's coming back to the benefit of Newark residents. Just a question about removing nutrients. That's something that every sewage district is going to have to deal with. What are we learning from some of our neighbors? What are they doing that we might want to implement as we start going through that?
Very good question. And I would say probably the best examples of what others have done is you have to go to the East Coast. New York, Chesapeake Bay, they're about 20 years ahead of where we are now because they had bigger nutrient problems way before we did. So this is a relatively new problem. We knew nutrients in the Bay were high, but it was never an environmental issue. So it wasn't until just recently that it started getting some attention. The lessons we've learned, it really comes down to what is the most cost-effective way to remove nutrients, not only from a treatment plant or an improvement standpoint, but also what we call nature-based solutions. So a wetland or a horizontal levee or something of that nature, nature will absorb the nutrients. The problem is that they are somewhat untested. There are some very real and challenging permitting issues for the San Francisco Bay that would preclude those projects moving forward. And you need a lot of these levees to treat the volumes of wastewater that we're talking about. So USD chose to do plant improvements with the notion of maybe doing smaller or multi-benefit or environmental, other environmental solutions down the road.
Yeah, Councilmember Collazo.
Thank you. Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
But I like to be educated. So when you said 24 million gallons are treated a day, is that all the gallons that are coming through, or is there gallons that aren't getting treated? Is everything getting treated?
Everything is getting treated.
Okay.
So that's a good point, and thank you for bringing that up. We call it wastewater, but it's really hazardous waste because it's a combination of everything that you all put down the drain, plus all the industries and whatnot. One of the things that we are proud about, and I touched on it a little bit when we went through the trenchless technologies, we put a lot of time and effort into maintaining our collection system. We are very fortunate that we don't have problems that many of our other brother and sister agencies have, that when it rains really hard, they have overflowing manholes with raw sewage coming out into streets, and that ends up making its way into the waterway. We don't have that, and one of the reasons is because we invest a lot of time and effort in maintaining our system and precluding what we call I&I. In other words, water leaking into the pipes from the outside. The same is true if you have a really bad collection system. If water's leaking in, then sewage could leak out. Since we have what we call a tight system, there's very little leaks, that we are confident that whatever you flush will end up at our treatment plant.
Okay. So as you touched on the trenchless pipe repairs, is that available to plumbers also?
It is, yes.
Because I had a customer that came in, she lived in Hayward, and she said, from all the way underneath her house, all the way to the street, they had to dig it up, and that would have been an excellent repair method if it was, available.
So not all plumbers do it. The upfront cost to procure the equipment is expensive. And then sometimes the pipe isn't a candidate, that if it's cracked or if part of it's caved in, or if you have a joint offset, in other words, if you looked at the pipes don't align, then it would not be a candidate for the trenchless replacement. But if it meets all that criteria, then absolutely it would be if the plumber is able to do so.
Okay, one more question. One more educating question. You said 81 permitted industries that their wastewater doesn't go straight into the sewers. How is that collected?
So these 81 permitted industries have what we call a pre-treatment system on site where if the constituent of concern is copper, they will have a pre-treatment system that will remove the copper before they then take that water and discharge it into the sewer system. Some of the semiconductor manufacturers we have around here use some pretty nasty chemicals in their process and a lot of acids. So if it's not removing copper or heavy metals, they're neutralizing acids or taking the stuff out of the wastewater that either will corrode our pipes or destroy the treatment plant or kill the treatment plant, because really the treatment plant is, we're mimicking what nature does on a very large industrial scale. So it's a living, breathing organism on a very large scale. So if we got a large quantity enough of nasty chemical in the pipe, it very well could kill the bugs that we use to do the beneficial treatment.
Thank you.
Very welcome.
Yeah, in fact, a number of those businesses really have their own treatment plants at their facilities.
That is correct.
Councilmember Bucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, Paul, I just had one quick question. Councilmember Jorgens kind of jogged my memory. If we do the $11 to $18 billion upgrade to help keep the nutrients out and stuff, and then we ship it to EBDA, and it gets mixed with the other places, what happens or what recourse do we have if they're not meeting standards? And it has to be done twice, I guess. And for those that don't know, a lot of our water treatment facilities around the East Bay pump to EBDA, which is the final kind of cleaning and check before it goes out to the water. So it feels like if we're doing that and everybody's doing that, could we save money by building a bigger place that could do it all at EBDA? And if not, if we have to do it, what sort of recourse do we have if they mess up down the line?
Sure. No, very good questions. So there's a couple of answers to that question. So I'll start with the recourse component. EBDA will have its own discharge permit related to nutrients, but each of the member agencies, of which Union Sanitary District is one of them, will also have a permit limit. So each agency will be required to meet a certain limit. So you can't have one person that is doing nothing and being a gross polluter and everybody else is making up the difference. So they will end up having to do their fair share regardless. That said, we're very fortunate that all the member agencies in EBDA, we talk to each other quite a bit, but they're all very responsible. Some have already done a nutrient removal program by doing plant optimization. Others are in the process of starting a project. We're currently under construction. So I would say EBDA as a whole is light years ahead of other agencies around the Bay. So, but in the event somebody tried to not pull their own weight, it would be a combination of internal discussions, internal fines, and then if it got really egregious, then the regional board would step in and provide some enforcement actions on that particular agency. Very welcome.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments? It's one of those services that when it's not working, we know when it's not working.
Right.
So when it's working well, we're appreciative. So I do want to take a moment and recognize Pat Kite, who is our representative for the Newark area. Pat. And we appreciate these presentations because it's, again, one of those items that the more we become educated on the process, the better we are able to provide input to our colleagues and constituents out there in the field. So thanks for the presentation, Paul.
No, thank you very much. Again, we appreciate the opportunity, and we like talking about this stuff, and oddly enough, we don't have a lot of audiences to talk about it. So anytime we have a captured audience for a few minutes, we really appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is the public comment section. This would be for residents to speak on any item that's not on the agenda this evening. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to an item not on the agenda? Yes, ma'am, please come forward.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. City staff, community members, my name is Shireen Ram. I'm the External Affairs Representative at AC Transit, and I'm here tonight to provide you an update on our Realign initiative. Realign is a review and update of our entire bus network, working with an existing operator count and budget resources aimed at meeting the needs of our riders in the post-pandemic era. AC Transit will launch the next phase of Realign public outreach on May 15th. Public outreach will run from May 15th through June 5th. So I encourage you and your staff to review and weigh in on the Realign draft plan at actransit.org/realign. Visit the AC Transit website. We're starting on May 10th, tomorrow. You will find a matrix of proposed route changes available for advanced public viewing. AC Transit staff will be making announcements at City Council meetings and will be at various community events and bus stops throughout our service area through June 5th. Additionally, we're working with community-based organizations to host events for Realign during this outreach window. We will be hosting 2 public workshops to review the proposal and to respond to questions on May 23rd and June 5th. June 5th is the last opportunity to comment on the draft plan before the plan moves to draft final plan. Additionally, a draft plan book with individual bus line routes will be available at local libraries and online. The Realign formal public hearing process comment period is scheduled to begin in August and conclude in September, with a board decision in October, working towards implementation in March 2025. I brought postcards. These postcards have begun circulating, and they include the Realign draft comment period dates, a QR code to the web page, and the web page address. So I will leave some of these behind. Thank you very much for your time, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
We don't normally comment on public comment, but this is important information, so I do want to ask the public meetings that will be held on May 23rd and June 5th. Have you identified the locations for those?
They will be virtual. They will be at in Oakland. So the May 23rd will be virtual via Zoom, and then the June 5th will be a hybrid at the AC Transit general offices and via Zoom.
And if local residents want to take a look at the realignment and service models that are being proposed, would they be able to hone in on their specific neighborhood or city to see the impacts as it might relate to current service and anticipated service?
Yes, one of my favorite tools is the mock trip planner. So you can actually go in there. I mean, it's not live, so you can go in there and enter a start location and a destination, and it'll tell you how Realign will affect that.
Great. Colleagues, again, this is public comment. Any comments on any of this item? Thank you very much for the
Thank you. I'm going to leave
presentation.
these, yeah.
Is there any other member of the public that would like to discuss? Yes, sir, please come forward. Thank you.
Good evening, council members and Mr. Mike, Mayor of the City of Newark. I'm very happy, and the way the city is running right now. I've been living in Newark for the last 31 years. The way the city been grown is amazing in the last like 10, 15 years with the new housing and with the Costco and other businesses. There's a lot of new projects coming to improve the downtown also. But since the city has grown, we have a lot of new populations, new diversity, different citizens and different, nationalities. I was wondering how, we can help to make the awareness of the city projects and the improvement of the city for the roads and for the downtown, how we can, involve ourselves. We want to be a part of that. And also when some other activity happening, like especially when the vandalism of one of the temple. The last time when I speak, like a couple of months ago, we want our community to be united, find out, what was behind all this stuff, and we can expose to the public. And when we met last time in the Union City, Mr. Jonathan was there, you was there, and we just make it everything clear that we doubt it, that the people who are being blamed that they did it. So we really want to make everything black and white. I heard that there was a meeting last week or this week with some federal agents. I know Mr. Lewis for the last 20 years, and I've been in community service for a long time, and I'm very active. I don't want to call myself as a leader, but since we had a meeting in Union City last time, probably you have seen my exposure that who I am. I've been very active for SB 403 bill, and that bill, how it's end up, where this end up, everybody know. We want to protect everybody from any kind of discrimination, and we should also be fair. That's why, since we see learning a lot of new stuff coming up, and last 31 years, we never feel like we need to be a part of all those city councils and all these activities. But since a lot of things new coming up, I'm learning when I come to a city council meeting, I'm very disappointed that I should have been here like 10 years or 15 years ago to learn much more. I just learned from Mr. Paul how the USD project is doing. We are the neighbor. Our wall is, we are the neighbor of each other. It's great stuff they are doing. As Mr. Buki, he talked about ACWD, how the rates are kind of rocket science, go like this all the time. I 100% agree with you because I work with the USD also, and I work with very close with ACWD also for our temple project of $10 million in Union City. So hopefully, down the road, we'll get a chance to come and be a part of all of our new city or new work city development, and love to see you guys all together and love to see our cities growing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, did you get the gentleman's name?
No, sir.
Do me a favor, leave your name with the city clerk.
Sure.
Thank you. Is there any other member? Yes, please, come forward. Good evening.
Hey, good evening. Good evening, council members, Mayor Bucci, and residents of Newark. I know all the emergency service had to go for their work, but I am going to talk about two items that I wanted to chat briefly about. Number one, I wanted to chat about the noise from the train horns that have suddenly increased in the last few months, I have noticed. And in general, I wanted to check what the city is thinking about any noise ordinance like a lot of other cities have. Like San Jose has a noise ordinance. On certain times, their freight trains cannot operate their horns. That I wanted to check if I know our public service folks are here, if they can educate me later. And then I think, what is our safety protocols for freight trains that might be carrying hazardous chemicals? We have seen a lot of derailments that have happened in the past. I live close to the railway line, so I'm always worried there is no protection between my house and the railway track. There is no walls and nothing. So that's one thing I wanted to get a little bit more idea. And hopefully, if the way USD presented their presentation, if we can have the railway folks come in and give us an education, what are they doing and how safe is Newark from their operations, I would love to know. The second thing I want to talk about is, the community did this Harmony in Community, a great initiative. So first of all, congratulations to the city, the mayor, the DOG, and I know the chief, Aragola, is not here, but thank you for doing that. Our city definitely needs more of those. I know I couldn't participate, but we would love to see more of that happen and encourage. I think our various faith leaders missed on this one. So having that come in and have our community understand what differences are and how those can be mitigated. Because we see a lot of social stigmatization happening in other channels. But as you know, Mayor Hannan, especially after the temple vandalization, our temple got vandalized, but it was used as an international matter. And a lot of Sikhs faced a lot of hate online. So I don't want that to happen to any of our community members. And I would love to see if the chief can come back and at least tell us what's going on, where are we, and how can we protect some organizations that are doing online, dirty games on our communities, that we can prevent that. And for once and for all, the public knows is clear for us. Mm-hmm. Thank you. That's what I have. Thank you. And I'll give my name to Sheila. Thank you, guys.
Just a couple quick comments. Assistant City Manager Link, I'll let you comment as well. We recently received $1 million for from State Assembly member Alex Lee to do a noise study as it involves trains through our community. I'm not sure whether, do you want to comment as to when we anticipate some information on that coming forward, Mr. Miranda? No. You know, when you step to the podium, my friend.
I'm actually going to ask Public Works Director Fajot to come up to
Yes,
answer that.
thank you, Public Works Director Fujot.
Sure, happy to address that, Mayor. So as council may recall, we did complete a quiet zones study a couple of years ago. And the conclusion of that was that all the active at-grade crossings in Newark are eligible for potential quiet zones. We are pursuing actual design for implementation of quiet zones at all of the active at-grade crossings right now. I believe it's $2 million that we received from Assemblymember Lee's office. That's for actual quiet zone implementation. Just got some news today, some good news related to Regional Measure 3. We have a quiet zones component as part of that $15 million package. And we're expecting MTC and Alameda CTC to take action on that in June. So that's $4 million for implementation. The total project to implement quiet zones at all of the active at-grade crossings in Newark was upwards of $6.5 million. But it's also a project that we could do in phases once we have the design fully completed. And we'll talk more about that with our CIP session at an upcoming meeting.
So during our CIP process, which will be in the next month or two, we'll get more details on that project as to the timelines.
Correct. Right now, our recommendation will be to have it in the CIP as a partially funded project, and once we have the design complete, we could step in and move. Whether or not we have it fully funded for the entirety of all at-grade crossings in town, or if we want to take a phased approach, those will be our options.
I think it's almost as you mentioned, Councilmember Bucci, residents just kind of want to see these things start to happen. And
Sure.
I think that's what we're moving towards that. So thank you. Yes, Councilmember Bucci?
I know a lot of discussion during public comment
I know.
tonight. First of all, I just want to say that I live close to the railroad tracks, and it feels like they have an obnoxious new driver the last few months who has been leaning on that horn at 3 a.m. So I hear everything you're saying and the trains. I've had some people say, well, if we're going to do quiet zones, why can't we just tell them to stop honking the horn? And so just specifically kind of some of the details, I think, some of the street, Mayhew's Landing is a great example. When you come to the railroad crossings at Mayhew's Landing, you have a gate on the right, and on the other side, you have a gate on the right. So for us to implement these quiet zones, we actually have to be able to block that off with double gates, because we've all seen people who do the move and cut through, right? So we have to do our due diligence to make sure that we kind of mitigate that as much as possible before the railroad will agree to kind of grant and implement the quiet zones. And there are some larger intersections. Thornton is a great example where we may have to actually do a center island as well as the double gates. And when we add gates, then we have electrical infrastructure and motors and all the things that go along with that. So as much as I want to just tell them just to stop honking the dang horns, we do have, a few steps along that way. But brother, I hear you. We are all frustrated with the train horns, and that is definitely something that we all want to see happen and that we're working on, including from the $1.9 million that we got from Alex Lee and hopefully some MTC money. We also have been looking at a federal grant, and the money that we got from Alex Lee's office, we were able to leverage on that grant money for kind of matching funds and to try to do things to get as much money as possible to get up to the $6 million needed to complete the entire project. So it's happening. It is coming, and it's frustrating sometimes, but it is definitely something we all want and that you should see here coming in the future. So I appreciate you speaking on it tonight.
Thank you. Are there any members of the, yes, please. I think this probably triples the public comments we've had in the last 12 months. Yes, ma'am. Welcome.
Hi, this is my first time, so.
Excellent. Congratulations.
Hello, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council members. My name is Angela Silvera, and I have been a Newark resident for the past 11 years. But more importantly to me, I'm a parent to a high schooler, a middle schooler, and an elementary student in NUSD. Today, I come to you as a mom and Newark Middle School PTSA board member. I'm asking the City Council to address the harms of tobacco sales in our community by adopting a comprehensive tobacco retail licensing ordinance, including ending the sale of all flavored tobacco products and vapes. As you may know, Newark is the only city left in this county that does not have a tobacco retail ordinance. As a mom, it is hard to acknowledge the truth that the tobacco industry targets youth and communities of color with aggressive marketing of tobacco products. But being that our high schoolers and middle schoolers would rather not use the bathroom all day than get caught up in the middle of the rampant vaping in the bathrooms proves that their marketing is working. And if we want to bring it even closer to home, then hear this. Last year, 71% of our Newark Memorial students, 12th graders, believed obtaining vapes is easy, and 12% of 11th graders reporting having vaped nicotine. In fact, in 2023, Baster ran a survey of 123 Newark students and learned that 80% of them said that there is a tobacco retailer they can easily walk to from home. And they weren't wrong. 16.7% of public schools are within 1,000 feet of a tobacco retailer. This means the students have easy access and they know it. They could even pick one up on the way to school. Is that what we want? But I thought, well, there's no way these retailers would sell to minors, right? Wrong, and the statistics don't lie. In 2020, California conducted youth decoy operations in 16 Newark tobacco retailers through the Stake Act, during which 7 of the retailers sold tobacco products to minors. Newark was actually tied with Oakland at 43.8% for the highest violation rates in Alameda County that year, demonstrating the need for enforcement of tobacco laws and in order to promote a culture of compliance among our local retailers. And if we reduce or cap the number of tobacco retailers in Newark, then our students would not have the ease that they do to get it now, which in turn would lead to students being healthier. More importantly, if we create a local tobacco retail ordinance, then the guidelines will be followed and students won't have access at all. On Tuesday, I actually went to the Newark Unified School District and spoke to them and asked them to create a resolution based on New Haven Unified, that they created a resolution to support this. And they seemed strongly in favor of it too. But now it's up to you. Since all other jurisdictions in Alameda County have passed tobacco retail ordinances, which have ended the sale of flavored tobacco products, Newark can join neighboring communities to protect our youth by reducing access to these addictive products by passing one too. And I would urge you to do this soon and to help our youth now. Thank you.
Angela, thank you for coming. City Attorney, a couple of points, if I may. One, the state of California passed a statute that prohibits the selling of flavored vapes. Is that correct, City Attorney? And that's currently in effect? Yes. And we anticipate bringing forward a draft tobacco licensing ordinance probably in the next several months. Am I correct on that, City Attorney?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I'll probably defer to actually Community Development Director Turner in terms of timing on that. I'm not sure.
Angela, you bring things to the council, things start happening. Go ahead, Mr. Turner.
Good evening, Council. Stephen Turner, Community Development Director. Yes, our Community Preservation Division is working on a draft tobacco retail licensing program. According to a work plan that we're drafting up, we believe that we can have that draft ordinance to the Council in the fall. And preceding that will be a lot of community input on the particulars of a draft ordinance. So we'll be doing community outreach and hope to bring that ordinance to you, yes, within a few months.
Excellent. So that will be coming to the council in the near future. Thank you. Any other public comments? We're on a roll. Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comments. Again, thank you to all the residents that showed up at tonight's meeting to provide input. That's what makes democracy work. You know, people sit at home and will sometimes complain about government and why doesn't, the city do this about that? And it's when you come to the council and you express your concerns, we listen to you because we represent you. And we want to make sure that the things that are important to you and the community, we work with staff to see if we can't get those things implemented. So that's why public input is so important. So thank you for taking the time to do that. The next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. The consent calendar will consist of items D1 through D5. Are there any items staff would like pulled from the consent calendar?
Yes, Your Honor. Item D5 to allow for recusals.
Great. Colleagues, any items that you'd like pulled from the consent calendar? Are there any items the public would like pulled from the consent calendar? Seeing none, the consent calendar will consist of the following. 1, the approval of audited demands. 2, the approval of the April 2025, 2024 minutes. 3, adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Axon Enterprises Incorporated for the purchase of Axon's Officer Safety Plan 10 premium hardware, software, and training packages and amend the 2022 to 2024 biennial budget and capital improvement plan. 4, adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute the 3rd amendment to the contractual services agreement with Stantec Consulting Incorporated to provide additional professional environmental services for Maori Village project. Would someone like to move these items to be approved with any item approved by resolution or ordinance being numbered consecutively, and that the reading of the title suffice for purposes of introduction or adoption of the ordinance?
So moved.
By Councilmember Collazo, by Vice Mayor Freitas. Please vote. That passes unanimously, 5-0. Item D5, which is adopt a resolution authorizing the acceptance of the State of California grants for the Old Town PDA Road Diet and Complete Street Improvement Project in the amount of $1 million, and for the Newark Resource Center Improvement Project in the amount of $1 million, and amend the 2022-2024 biennial budget and capital improvement plan. Item D5 was pulled from the consent calendar to allow for recusals. Vice Mayor Freitas?
Yes, Your Honor. I will ask to be recused on item D5 because I own business and property interest in the following 37220 Magnolia Street residential rental property.
Councilmember Collazo.
Yes, Your Honor, I have to recuse myself as I own residential property at 36805 Magnolia Street, 7015 Thornton Avenue, Mexico Tortilla Factory, 7155, 7167, 7179 Thornton Avenue, commercial and rental properties.
Colleagues, any questions or comments regarding D5?
I'd like to move the item.
Sorry.
I'd like to move the item.
Thank you. Is there any member of the audience that would like to comment on item D5? If not, I have a motion from Councilmember Jorgens.
Second.
By Councilmember Bucci. Please vote. And that passes with 3 ayes, and Vice Mayor Freitas and Councilmember Collazo are recusing themselves.
Resolution of the City Council of the City of Newark authorizing the city to accept the Assembly Bill 102 Old Town PDA Road Diet and Newark Resource Center improvements grants through the State of California and amend the 2022-2024 biennial budget.
Thank you. The next item, folks, are our public hearings. We have none of those, so we're going to go to other business. Item F1 is to adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contractual services agreement with AREP US Incorporated to develop a sea level rise vulnerability assessment and adaptation strategy and amending the 2022-2024 biennial budget and capital improvement plan. Assistant City Manager Voyarka.
Yes, tonight, Your Honor, we have Environmental Services Manager James Scanlon, who will provide the staff report and introduce the consultant with him today.
Thank you. Mr. Scanlon?
Yes. There we go. Great. Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. I'm James Scanlon, the Environmental Services Division Manager. And this presentation is on a proposed sea level rise vulnerability assessment and adaptation strategy. So sea level is rising. Average sea level has increased by about 200 millimeters. That is 0.65 feet since 1900. And sea level has been increasing more rapidly recently. So this is a graph from the NASA website at climate.nasa.gov, which shows the rise in sea level since 1900 based on tide gauges and more recently upon satellite gauges as well. As you can see, average sea level has increased by about 200 millimeters or 0.65 feet since 1900 and has been increasing most rapidly over the last 20 years. This increase is due to melting glaciers, ice sheets, and thermal expansion of the oceans. This table shows the projected range of sea level increase over the next 100 years. This table is from the draft California Sea Level Rise Guidance 2024 Science and Policy Update. As you can see, there's a wide range of projected increases. The report states that the intermediate low estimate of 1.6 feet in 2100 provides a reasonable estimate of the lower bound for the most likely sea level rise by 2100, and that the intermediate scenario, which is 3.1 feet in 2100, provides a reasonable upper bound for the most likely range of sea level rise by 2100. Depending on the increase in sea level, the impact to Newark could be very significant. Potential impacts include more frequent and intense flooding, erosion of levees, emerging groundwater, and bay water intrusion into drinking water aquifers. This would impact the residents, businesses, and infrastructure in Newark. So the scope of work for this project includes 6 tasks. Task 1 is to gather data. AirUp will collect and review all relevant and available hydrodynamic, flood, and sea level rise studies. Task 2 is to develop a flood hazard model using the data collected in Task 1. Task 3 is to prepare a vulnerability assessment of the potential impacts on infrastructure, residents, businesses, and the environment. Task 4 is to develop a risk assessment to determine which impacts would result in the most significant consequences by accounting for sea level rise, for several sea level rise and storm scenarios. Financial losses related to the inundation of critical assets, including infrastructure, residents, and businesses, will be modeled quantitatively, and the impact on wetlands and vulnerable communities will be assessed qualitatively. Task 5 is to develop adaptation measures. For the highest priority areas identified in the vulnerability and risk assessment, mitigation and adaptation measures will be proposed. Task 6 is public involvement. AirUp will facilitate 2 community meetings. The first meeting will be held within the first 2 months of the project and have a threefold purpose. First, to inform the public about the project process and goals. Second, to solicit input on areas of concern. And third, to educate attendees on important concepts key to understanding this project. For example, vulnerability, risk, and adaptation. The second meeting will occur during Task 5, focused on the adaptation measures to present recommendations and describe how public input was incorporated into the study. The project is scheduled to be completed in approximately 9 months. So, to select a consultant for this project, staff released a request for proposal. 5 proposals were received and 3 firms were invited for interviews. The team of AirUp, along with their subcontractors, subcontractor, Deltaris, was unanimously top-ranked by the selection committee. ERA project manager Jack Hogan is online to answer questions. And Jack, would you like to introduce yourself? I believe.
Sure. Thank you, Jim.
All right.
Yeah, thank you. Good evening. My name is Jack Hogan. I'm a climate risk and resilience engineer with ERA based here in the Bay Area. I would be the project manager for the consultant team on this project. I am a civil engineer by background, licensed in California, and my work specializes in flood risk management and sea level rise adaptation. So with that background and that specialization, I'm very excited about this project and the scope of work that the city has prepared for this effort. So looking forward to working with the city of Newark on this effort.
Okay. Thanks, Jack. So staff recommends the council adopt the resolution to authorize the city manager to execute a contractual services agreement with AirUp US Incorporated to develop a sea level rise vulnerability assessment and adaptation strategy and amend the 2022-2024 biennial budget and capital improvement plan. So that ends the presentation, and we're happy to take questions or comments.
Thank you for the presentation. Are there any questions from folks in the audience? Comments from folks in the audience? Yes, sir. Please come forward.
Good evening again, and thank you again. I think this is a great step to what our city needs. I only have one quick question regarding the data. What kind of data would be collected? I want to know a little bit about that, and it can happen in the future. But would that data be publicly available to the residents of Newark? And that would be great if it can be publicly available so that we can see how that modeling is done. Thank you.
Great. Madam Clerk, can we pull up that one slide that showed the various degrees of rise?
I'm afraid I can't, sir, but Mr. Scanlon, if you can.
Yeah, and then Jim, you heard the question, whether or not the data, once the analysis is done, that'll certainly, I won't speak for you, but I'm certain that that information will be made available not only to the council, but to the public as well. But I'll let you address that.
I'll maybe I could defer to Jack on publicly available data.
Yep, happy to. A lot of the data we intend to use for the study is already publicly available. And the models that we've chosen to use as well are open source and freely available. So those will also be provided to the city of Newark at the conclusion of this study. So many of the data sources will be coming from gauge stations, for example. So those maintained by NOAA around the Bay Area are commonly used for these studies, as well as stream gauges from within the watershed areas also publicly available. So as far as I'm aware, no proprietary data will be used or held in this study. Everything would be publicly available and provided at the conclusion of the effort.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. And assuming that we approve this RFP, I would ask that maybe the city put a link on the website with the data that Jack has mentioned. So residents interested in looking at some of the data that's previously been collected, it's available for them to take a look at.
Okay. Yes.
Any other questions from folks in the audience? Yes, sir. Or ma'am, please come forward.
Hey, good evening.
Good evening.
My name's Jonna Sokale. I'm a resident of Newark. Nice to see all of you tonight. And thank you so much for potentially, you're going to vote tonight, potentially undertaking the sea level rise study. There were just 4 points that I wanted to share with you and the consultants, even though I know there's going to be public comment down the road. Newark seems to be doing this study by itself, which is fine, but at the same time, BCDC and many of the other agencies are looking more at a regional approach. So I just want to make sure that whatever you determine here also looks at our neighbors, Fremont, Union City, and within various watersheds. And I know you're going to be working on the Maori Landscape Unit, which is terrific. In addition to looking at sea level rise, I think I heard that the study will also look at storm surge and riverine impacts in the combination. And we've seen around the country that the first stages of sea level rise impact tend to happen when those things converge. So I think it's really important for us to be able to plan for early adaptation when we look at how those things layer. I'd also like to make sure that the study to be undertaken looks at the potential impacts that other neighboring jurisdictions across the Bay and even in the North Bay are doing, and how their potential adaptation measures could have an impact here in the South Bay, as well as whatever we come up with as adaptation measures, how those measures might affect more distant locations. There was a study done 3 or so years ago by the Stanford Natural Capital Program, which looked at the modeling of the bay, and it looked at the hydrodynamic modeling, the benthic modeling of the topography underneath the water. It looked at currents coming down through the delta as well as through the tide, and determined that things that might happen in the Maori operational unit, our local watershed, as well as other areas, could have significant financial as well as life risk impacts around the bay. And I just want to make sure that all of those things get layered into this study. And I'm really grateful that you've gone beyond really what the RFP was, and that you are including adaptation measures in this, which I think when it was first out, it was more of just a vulnerability assessment. So I'm really super grateful that this is coming forward.
Thank you for your comments. The comment I'll make, Jim, you can certainly come forward and comment on the other issues that were referenced. This is clearly a regional issue. We are not going to solve the issue of sea level rise as a small community. This is absolutely a Bay Area issue, and we do need to work collaboratively and share data and information with our colleagues throughout the Bay so that we're not implementing ideas and tactics that create greater risk to other communities. But I'll let you comment further, Jim.
Yeah, so we will be coordinating with Fremont and Alameda County Flood Control District and other interested parties as the first part of this project. We are going to look at storm surge in conjunction with sea level rise. There's a couple different scenarios, 100-year storm and different levels of sea level rise associated with those. So they'll be doing compound modeling of both of those things. And yes, we'll also look at the effect on other neighboring communities as well. Yeah.
Other comments from the public regarding this item? Colleagues? It's an excellent report. You know, we've heard about sea level rise, not just in Newark, but Bay Area wide for a number of years now. So I'm so pleased that we're taking an approach to identify the risks at this point and all the other avenues that we're going to be looking at as we move forward. We don't need to wait for a disaster for us to then figure out what are we going to do. So I applaud you for this effort. Just a couple quick questions. Can we go back one more slide where we show the rise based on intermediate and I can't recall which slide that was. It might have been.
Computer wants to reboot. No. Okay.
And the reason I asked that, Jim, I'm wondering, because I'm not an expert, obviously, in sea level rise, do those cities along the peninsula, because they, like Pacifica and other cities that actually are right up against the Pacific Ocean, are they more at risk as a result of sea level rise than we are here in the Bay? Because it seems like we're somewhat insulated by that landmass known as the peninsula in terms of its impacts from, certainly from the Pacific Ocean. But these figures here where you talk about—
Is this what you're looking at?
Yeah,
This one, yeah.
where you talk about intermediate to low and intermediate, these are anticipated increases in sea level rise in the bay, not necessarily on the peninsula, as could be impacted by the Pacific Ocean, or help me understand that.
Yeah, these are California average sea level rise, so it would be along the coast.
Along the coast.
And in the bay.
Okay.
There's slight differences. They have a slightly different number for San Francisco and a slightly different number for the city of Alameda, but they're all pretty close to each other as far as the amount of sea level rise.
Okay.
Yeah.
The only other comment I have is that as we do the community meetings, I want to make sure that we reach out as broadly as we can to all the environmental organizations in the Tri-City area, because this is an issue that's of great interest to not only our residents, but certainly to all these environmentalist groups. And I want to make sure that they have every opportunity to participate and comment, so that when the package comes forward to us in terms of what we should be looking at in terms of implementation, they've had a full opportunity to participate.
Yes, we can do that.
Great. This is an action item, so we do need to adopt a resolution to approve this contract.
Motion to approve item F1.
Thank you, Councilmember Fuji. Second by Councilmember Jorgens. Please vote. And that passes unanimously 5-0.
Resolution of the City Council of the City of Newark authorizing the city manager to execute a contractual service agreement with Arup US Inc. for the development of a sea level rise vulnerability assessment and adaptation strategy, and amending the 2022-2024 biennial budget and capital improvement plan.
Okay, thank you.
You realize as mayor, when you make mistakes, you don't laugh along with it because it just simply compounds the mistake. You simply learn to move on. The next item is a pension update and cost management strategies presentation, and by motion, provide direction regarding establishment and funding of a new pension section 115 trust. Assistant City Manager Hovorka.
Thank you, Your Honor. Tonight we have Kristen Lee, our Finance Director, that will begin with our staff report, and then we'll introduce our consultants. Ms. Lee?
Thank you, Assistant City Manager Hovorka. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council members. Tonight's presentation on pension and cost management strategies is intended to provide an overview and background information on the city's pension liability, with a particular focus on the implementation of a Section 115 trust. And also to recollect the City Council's proactive actions that have been taken over the years to help manage our pension cost, and we'll also be reviewing the various cost management strategies and the rationale for staff's recommendation for City Council's approval on the creation of a Section 115 trust. As part of the Finance Department's priority to promote long-term fiscal sustainability, we had engaged NHA advisors to assist with evaluating and implementing the city's pension cost management strategies. And so it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Craig Hill for tonight's presentation. Mr. Hill actually has an impressive resume, so bear with me. Mr. Craig Hill is the founding partner of NHA Advisors and has been a public finance professional since 1989. His clients include over 80+ California cities, school districts, counties, and former redevelopment agencies throughout the state. And I actually just learned earlier that Mr. Hill has been working with the city since 1992. Mr. Hill regularly speaks on public finance, renewable and energy efficient project financing, and public policy matters to professional associations including the League of California Cities, the California Society of Municipal Finance Officers, the California Debt and Investment Advisory Commission, and Municipal Management Association of Northern California, and he also serves on the board for the HDL companies, which are our sales tax consultant and utility users tax consultants. In addition to providing the financial advisory expertise on public finance, Mr. Hill also provides guidance and expertise on capital financing strategies. And if you don't remember any of the aforementioned information that I just mentioned, just remember that Mr. Hill and the NHA team was instrumental in helping the city with the strategic planning and the financial analysis for our 2019 Civic Center project. And the result of that provided the city with the most optimal bond issuance and bond rate. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Craig Hill.
Good evening.
Good evening.
And good to see some of you again. It's been a while. This is the first time I've been in the new facility, so as Kristen mentioned, it turned out really well. I'm glad the financing and the project itself worked well.
On time and on budget. Actually below budget.
We've used your project as a case study for a number of other communities around the Bay Area, so we were glad that you took the first step in this strategy. So as Ms. Lee mentioned, what we're going to try to do real quickly is just give you, this is something that's been in the works for a very long time. Pension has not, is nothing new to all of you, as you know, from a budgetary perspective. So we're just going to go through a little bit of background on how you got to where you are today, some of the things that you've already done to really attack the pension liability issue, and the words we like to use is fiscal sustainability, right? We know that this animal of a pension liability seems to move around and it's really hard to get a handle on, and so there's only so many tools that you can apply to make sure you're addressing it and you're not blindsided by it. So real quickly going some pension 101, as you know, there's two components to what you budget every year for your pension payments. So when finance brings you a budget, they say this is how much you're going to be paying this year to CalPERS. A portion of it is for everybody who's working today, what their contribution is, right? Think of it as like all of us having a 401k contribution. The unfunded accrued liability, or is the UAL, the short term, is really kind of what needs to be caught up from past employees or past obligations and promises that the city had with employees. So that's the big thing that seems to drag a lot of communities down, because it's something that's in the past that really you can't change other than only paying it off. I'm not going to try to explain what this graph means other than as a non-actuary to let you know that the reason that this is a really hard thing to project is every one of those colors is an event or an annual outcome that CalPERS has. When they have a really good year, you get actually to reduce your liability, right? They earn more than what they projected, so your assets have grown. So those are those darker colors on the bottom. So they're actually dragging your payment obligation down. If they have a bad year from an investment strategy, they get to add a new layer that they say, okay, well, we're sorry, you lost $5 million last year. We're going to give you the next 10 or 15 years to pay that off. So we call it layering on the cake, right? They just keep adding. Likewise, if they change an assumption, they determined that through an actuarial study that folks are living longer than they thought, they'll change that formula. That'll create a new liability as well. So it just instantaneously, you now have a new portion that needs to be required. So that could be any one of these colors that gets added as things change in Sacramento.
Is that the discount rate? Is that what they call that? When you talk about the investments that go up and down every year?
Yes.
They're referring to as the discount rate?
Yes. So real quick, in the past, historically, CalPERS actually did really well with their investment strategies. A lot of the assumptions and the livelihood of those participants in the program were shorter, so you always seem to stay ahead. Really what happened is, they had some pretty significant losses. I'll show you that in a second. They came to the realization we can't assume we're going to make a lot of money every year, so they started lowering that discount rate, and every time they changed one of these things, it basically added to the liability. Mm-hmm. So as you know, your program is divided into two kind of pieces. You've got your miscellaneous, which is everybody except for your safety, your police officers. You have two different tiers. You have what we call Classic, and then you have PEPRA. And for those of you who've been around for about 10 years, you'll know that PEPRA is really everybody new to the system. Their benefit package is lower, and so we're not seeing the liabilities accrue. You're able to actually keep that up with your normal payments. This is a graph I'm going to leave up just for a second to show you the volatility I mean, we went back, pretty far, looking back to 1995. But as you can see, they did in the 90s and the early 2000s, they killed it, right? They were actually doing really well in their investment strategies. A couple of down years, but generally speaking, they were always beating what was needed to hold your liability constant. That's that orange line. You can see as we got into 2008, 2009, really set everybody back. And then they've had a tough time, maintaining a consistent return that has met their numbers. And that's why they've effectively brought that discount rate down to 6.8. We get asked a lot, well, we're not the only ones in this situation, right? Everybody else is. And so here's just a quick representation of the liabilities that your adjacent peers have just in Alameda County. The main thing to look at is not so much the dollar amount at the bottom, because obviously Oakland is a lot larger than Newark, and so they're going to have a much bigger number. But the fact that it's the funding status or the percentage, so that is how much percent of your assets do you have against your liability? And you can kind of see that really everybody is in that high 60s to low 70s range. So it's the more you're getting ahead of this, the higher that contribution rate is going, right? So as an example, just to pick on Dublin, they're actually, have been making contributions at a pretty aggressive rate to increase their assets, and it's kind of decreasing their UAL. So this is what I think is a little bit more important than what I just talked about, and that is kind of where is your contribution going? How does this affect your budget? This is general fund, right? So this is for finance to bring you numbers every year and a budget every year. This is what we really want to be paying attention to, not just this year, but where is it going? And as you can see, starting for fiscal year 24-25, that payment's going to be just inside of around $10 million. You did get a little bit of a break in 24. I'll speak to why that happened with some of the proactive work that council did with staff in the last couple of years. But even as you stand today, it's projected that your payments are going to get over $14 million in the next 10 years, right? So the good news is once you kind of catch up, you can see in 2038, it drops back down because you've effectively amortized or paid off a substantial portion of your UAL. Now, when we talk about how do you attack this, what are your strategies that you have, you've actually done a great job systematically over the last number of years doing a lot of these things. First one is obviously sharing this liability with your labor negotiations, and that's a fairly standard practice now with most of the public agencies we work with. Fresh Start is a chance to actually ask CalPERS to allow you to kind of re-amortize the liability. It flattens it out, but it shortens it. So you've done that for both of your programs. The other thing is you can do is if you have the cash flows, you can actually just prepay your year in advance in July, and that you actually get a 3.3% discount. So for communities that have the reserves and aren't waiting for the property tax collections in December, if you can make that payment, you're effectively saving 3.3%. So that's a very easy one to do. The other step or tool that you have used to great success is what we call an ADP, or an additional discretionary payment. This is kind of like making a mortgage payment. You always get that option to make that one extra payment. It puts it in the coupon and says, would you like to make an extra payment this month? Well, in this case, the city has made two, and these have been from surplus cash that you had in any particular year. Council took action to say, yes, the best and highest use of that money is to absolutely try to buy down this debt. You give that money to Sacramento, you don't get to get it back, but it immediately goes into your assets and therefore reduces your UAL. So you have done those two. And really the last remaining viable option that we're going to talk about tonight is what's called the Section 115 trust. So you have a pension reserve that has cash in it now that has been funded over the years, again, from some of your surplus revenues. The Section 115 trust is like your OPEB trust. It's effectively, it is a trust. it is authorized with more power than you have under what I call an informal reserve. So your pension reserve really just operates like any of your other reserves. It's subject to the same kinds of investment strategies and permitted investment options. When you actually do a trust, you have the ability to be more strategic and assertive with what your investment strategy is for what you want to use the trust. And we'll talk about that in a second. So just historically going back and looking at what you've done, your accomplishments as it's related to your pension cost strategies. As I mentioned, almost 10 years ago, you started right with the two fresh starts back in 15 and 16. And then you started to look at really formalizing your reserve policies and putting that first $5 million in 17. The two big installments you did during the pandemic era in 21 and 22, where you put effectively $15 million towards this liability. And we're here before you after having kind of worked through the fiscal year 23, 24, identifying what kind of balances you had in the reserve fund and how best to use those pension reserves. And we'll talk about potentially asking for direction to establish a 115. So real quick, when you took the money, the 5 and the 10, and you contributed it to Sacramento or gave it to CalPERS, what does it immediately do? It affects, it becomes one of those colorful layers in your cake, right, down below. So it takes down your payments going forward. Is it an immediate impact, or is it, over time? It's absolutely, the benefit is recognized over time. So if you need aggressive cash flow, like we just really have to shave $5 million out of our budget, it's probably not the best thing to do. But it does give the money to CalPERS, they invest it, and it's earning, what your other assets for CalPERS are doing. On the downside, it's, as I mentioned, it really doesn't have a lot of budget flexibility. Once that money is handed to CalPERS, it's gone. You don't get to ask for a fresh start. You don't get to ask for it back. Sorry, can we have half of it back? They put it in the pot and say, thank you very much. You now have a lower UAL. On the Section 115 trust, which again, you're holding on to this money. This is not now going to CalPERS, but it is going into a designated trust. You have the ability to treat it separately from your investment strategy that you have for your general fund and for your other reserves. So whether you're investing in LAIF, whether you're investing in CAMP, whether you're going out and buying treasuries, that you have a government code that governs exactly what you can invest your general fund balances in. The Section 115 trust lives under its own set of authority, and it has its own investment options. So you can be, I don't like to use the word aggressive, but you can be a little bit more long-term vision, and you can say, well, we want this to be money that we're going to look at in 10 years. So, what's a 10-year horizon look like from an investment strategy? But you certainly have market risk, right? If you're going to put it there, it's like anybody else's retirement account. What you choose to put it in will dictate what kind of volatility you potentially have. I want to mention also that your current balance in the pension reserve fund is a little over $12 million. And so that is for both pension and OPEB. And the conversation would be about whether some of that goes into the 115. A quick comparison, I won't go through all of this, but as I've already mentioned, the idea is that it is on the trust, you're not actually paying down the UAL, right? You're putting the money in the trust. And for those of you who are accountant types, right, you have assets and liabilities or debits and credits. So you're adding to the trust, but your UAL isn't changing. It just means you've got more assets over here along with the CalPERS assets going against the same liability. If you do a one-time payment or an ADP, what you're actually doing is giving the money to CalPERS, and it's actually reducing the UAL. So when we think about the biggest strategy or the biggest benefit to actually putting a trust together, other than just allowing you to potentially invest it more in line with what you want, We're showing you here the green bars represent contributions. So should council direct staff to start this process and contribute money into the trust, theoretically what we're showing here is that contribution in the current fiscal year, 23-24, that's the large green that will be moved from the pension reserve into the 115. You can see then that what will happen is the impact over time is now you have an asset that you can actually draw from the trust to help make payments. That orange line really represents you managing your payments to CalPERS. That prior slide I showed you had increasing payments that were going to go up to about $14 million. That's the blue lines that you see there again. But if, as a strategy, should the city need to use, maybe have financial pressures, let's say in 28, 29, 30, it could actually draw from the trust to make those payments or a portion of those payments. And so mathematically, what we're trying to show here is by the contributions, you can see that orange line flattens out those payments, makes it more like a level mortgage. And you're effectively able to save yourself by putting this money in those early years, all those green contributions, into the trust and then drawing them out over a longer period of time. So you can certainly let the trust grow, and at some point it'll have a big balance and you could give all that money to CalPERS to pay down. But this is a strategy we have a lot of cities looking at because this is about managing the unknown. This is about, well, we don't know what our revenue and our expenditures are going to look like in the next 5 to 10 years. So if this is a tool that we can set up, park it, and know that we can draw on it to help make payments to pension in the future, then this is something we want to, you're not forced to do this. This is just an example of what could happen and one of the benefits that you would have. So there are a number of steps that need to happen in order to actually form it. This is administrative in terms of how the trust gets approved. There's a resolution and a number of other steps. There is also a third-party administrator. This is not something that staff does. This is an actual, think about it as like an investment trust, right? So it has all kinds of constraints and protective lock boxes around it. So there is a trust provider that would be involved. You actually use one with your OPEB trust, so you already have CalPERS serving in that capacity. We could easily have them serve in that capacity for this one as well. But it will take another action or an action of council to adopt of the formal approval of the trust. And then it would obviously require the direction to staff to move money from the reserve into the trust itself. So what we are proposing as part of a next step, not tonight, this is just intended to be educational and maybe get some direction, is that we would come back with an approval of the formation for the Section 115 trust with the selection of the administrator, and then have the designated staff from an administrative perspective be empowered to process the rest of the payments. And I think with that, I will turn it back to staff or answer any questions.
Great. Before I turn it over to my colleagues, I'll see if there's anyone in the audience that has any questions or comments. Colleagues, Councilmember Bucci.
Thank you. Mr. Hill, it's nice to see you again. I think last time I saw you, I had 2 eyes, so it's been a while. Couple things. So just to be clear, a 115 trust would replace the surplus account that we have now, right? We wouldn't still have both.
No, we're actually suggesting that you still maintain that kind of as a fungible. So the pension reserve that you have now is, while formally set up in your policies, has a lot of flexibility in terms of the council can move money out of, if you had to, you could move money out of that to do any number of things, either related to the pension or even back to the general fund. So we don't necessarily believe you need to eliminate it off the books. It just may not be funded at the levels that you have now.
Okay. Are we subject to capital gains on any of this?
No.
Okay. You had mentioned that we could have CalPERS manage it. I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not a huge fan of their investment strategies. I think the best thing they've done is lower the discount rate, because even though we pay more, the target doesn't move as much. It seems like we can kind of have a better plan in place and manage it better. What are our options if we don't want to go with CalPERS as far as having a different third party manage the trust?
Yeah, so there's about 4, including CalPERS, which started this program. Right, this is a separate unit within their bureaucracy that manages the 115 trust. There's 3 other firms that are designated and authorized administrators. So, and we really see one as they're probably the largest trust administrator that's not CalPERS. They were the ones that actually kind of got the original authority to do this. So they're the old dog.
Who is that?
That's PARS.
Okay.
And then you have an up-and-comer who's running around and actually getting a number of cities, not only in California, but some other states to do it. They've been around, I think, 3 or 4 years, and then you have a third one or a fourth one, I guess, that's been in business for 15 years as well. So yes, the short answer is there's options. Some of them are much more cut and paste in terms of what they do. We have cities that want to have a very active investment strategy. They want to talk about it every week. They want to pick stocks, pick bonds, whatever. And then you have others that want to kind of set it and forget it. This is kind of our objectives that we'd like. And can you make sure that our investment portfolio meets those objectives? So it's really, we're usually only making recommendations into some of those others if somebody's insisting on being a very, aggressive or assertive investment strategy. They have a finance subcommittee that wants to get involved, things like that. CalPERS, as you can imagine, they do have options, but they're not going to let you pick kind of what you want to do.
Yeah. I'm not impressed with their picks. Let me ask you this. CalPERS doesn't manage it for free. What are the fees for that from them on the 115?
We could bring back, we've got a cheat sheet with kind of everybody's standard fee schedules. I don't have it with me tonight.
I would be interested to see the fee schedules for CalPERS and all 3 of those other places that you mentioned. I think that's all my notes. Thank you, Mr. Hill.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Bucci. Other questions, comments? I just had a couple comments, and thank you, Councilmember Bucci, for asking about the fees. I'll be interested in that issue as well. I was a little confused on the first answer, to be honest with you.
Okay.
We have, I think you said $12.9 million set aside in our reserve. I was envisioning that $12.9 million in reserve would go immediately into the 115 trust. Is that the case?
I'll let Finance Director.
Good evening, Kristen Lee, Finance Director again. Mayor Hannon, we have currently $12.4 million.
$12.4 million.
And what we were proposing is we're able to move $12 million out and to use that as the setup money for the 115 trust. And our current mechanism to continue to fund the reserve will still be in place. Every year during our closing process, we would evaluate what our surplus or deficit, and then decide at that time, and of course bring that request to council for your review and for your approval.
Ms. Lee, can we go back to the one chart that showed that if we created the trust, how the line would kind of level out in terms of the, that one you just passed, yeah. And I know this is only an example. Would you anticipate that if we start to see an actual reduction in the UAL payments that we need to make to the state because of the creation of the trust, would you anticipate that those additional dollars that we save would go to CalPERS to reduce our liability, or would they stay in the 115 trust and continue to grow, or we haven't thought that far ahead?
Well, again, depending on the risk of the market, our goal, of course, is to invest that money. And what we were looking at is an average. And what I've seen is a 3 to 5 year average. We usually would anticipate between a 5 to 7% return compared to our current reserve balance, which is sitting in LAIF. And that, I mean, it's great now. LAIF is at 5% or close to 5%, but LAIF has been many years in like the 2% percentile. And as Mr. Hill has mentioned, they're more limited, restricted on the type of investments. And so to answer your question again, Mayor, our goal is to continue to fund the 115 Trust, of course, with the $12 million. And then we would have to work with NHA team to kind of see what's a good amount to continue to fund. And then as you see with this illustration, we would fund it for maybe 1 or 2 years. And if we are anticipating more increased pension costs starting fiscal year 2027, 2028. And so those would be the years that we would look to withdraw from the trust fund to pay for that. But before withdrawing that, it's sitting in a trust fund earning higher interest is what our goal is, or what we would hope.
And maybe my question wasn't clear. I'm looking, for example, at years 2029 through 2037, where if we didn't do the Trust 115, we see the average increase in our UAL increasing up to almost the $14 million per year. But because we've created the trust, the amount of the increase that we anticipated isn't going to be there.
Oh, yes.
So my thinking is that excess savings that we receive in those years, would we maintain those back into the trust, or would we look to pay down the UAL even further at that point?
My apologies. Yes. We are looking to slice off that cliff, and so we are looking to pay down the UAL.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I think just one other add to that response is, strategically, the way the city would want to look at it is literally on a year-by-year basis. Sure. This sets you up for a nice 15-year window. Theoretically, all these assumptions work. With what you put in the first couple of years into that trust, it should allow you then to be able to straight line your payments. Obviously, CalPERS is going to have changes in their assumptions. They're going to have different investment trends. That blue line is going to be moving up or down. Sure. So at the same time, what city staff will be wanting to do is look at the performance of the 115 Trust. How well are we doing, forgetting how CalPERS is doing, and do we actually want to hold on to that money? Because, there's a little bit of an arbitrage play there too as well, right? So yes, while we think, mechanically we want to draw it down to flatten it out and take out those payments, those higher payments, it may be that we say, you know what, we're good. We actually, from a cash flow perspective, our budget can handle paying a little bit more in CalPERS. We're going to let the trust really do its thing, and it's it's going to grow faster than we anticipated. So it's a win-win. Sure. So this isn't something that we're advising is a kind of a set it and forget it. It's really going to be evaluating performance, really looking at what CalPERS has done, and is where, historically, what they've done for that last year, and then making a recommendation.
Right, because obviously the more money we have in the trust, the more return we're going to receive over a longer period of time.
Exactly.
And Ms. Lee, you mentioned we're looking at this from a kind of a 3 to 5 year perspective. I almost look at this as almost a targeted retirement plan in that sense, in terms of the sooner we're closer to retirement, the more conservative the investment, because we want to preserve, the monies that we've put into the account. Does this give us the ability to not only look at a short-term investment, 3 to 5 years, but also a longer-term investment, which might create a modest increase in risk, but may have a greater rate of return? Are we looking at kind of multiple models to determine kind of where's that sweet spot?
Yes, we have been looking at a 5, a 10, and a 15-year model, and there's actually, depending on the administrator that we choose, they will have tools to help us with that.
Great. I'm excited about this. First of all, the city's done a fabulous job under your direction in terms of looking at opportunities that we can save money, provide more services to our residents. But I'm also, as you are, I'm also worried about any risk that we might be subject to, because that's really the responsibility that we'd be, fiduciarily responsible for our monies that we receive here. And I certainly have greatest confidence in you. this would be an item that we would look at it from a council perspective on an annual basis during the budget review process?
Yeah, the plan is to have an annual report and an annual review. I'm not sure exactly if it would align with the budget process at this time. We do have a biannual budget, but we will have annual and maybe even mid-year reports to
Okay.
provide.
Good. Other questions? Yes, Councilmember Bucci.
Thank you. The little peak here at 2044, and I understand this is a moving target, but does it jump there because we feel like that's where we'll get to that, let's call it the 90% fully funded level? Is that what I'm looking at down here?
I'm laughing because I laid into my analysts about, somebody's going to ask a question about that. So without getting too deep in the actuarial methodology, that's a hiccup that CalPERS has as kind of a cleanup year, right? The way they look at it is this is all their projections. There's a model online that the city can go into and look at its forecasting according to CalPERS. And for everybody, this isn't just Newark, but every city we're working with, they all have that little hiccup. And when you ask kind of the staff in Sacramento about it, they say, well, ignore that. It's not really there. It's just it's the way our modeling kind of handles the catch-all. So why they couldn't just ignore it and have it taper like the rest of it, I have no idea. But I was literally a month ago saying, somebody's going to ask about that.
Well, yeah, it stands out, and I'm looking at it, it's 20 years out, so I'm doing the math on it, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe we get close, and I still think it's weird that they consider 90% fully funded, right? Even though it can swing up or down 10% a year, but okay, no, that's fine. I was just kind of curious about it. Let me ask you this, based off of this projection, if we were to put the 12 million into a 115 with a modest 5% return on it year over year, at what point do you think that we would actually hit that 90%? I realize that's a tough question. I'm just looking for kind of a window, possibly.
You know, there's 5 major assumptions that go into the response to that. So it's really almost impossible to tell you I mean, theoretically, you're at 90% when you get to about the cliff, right? So 2037, you've almost effectively wiped out your full UAL. So by wipe out, that means you're 100% funded, right?
Yeah.
So if I had to guess off the top of my head, all of these assumptions being true, you're probably talking about 15 years from now.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Because we're going to see a significant increase in contributions just because of the changes that we've made in the pension process, as you outlined with PEPRA.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, once classic folks start to retire and other things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
Thank you, Mr. Hill.
Thank you for the excellent report, and glad to see you again. And
thank you.
appreciate your excellent advice. Thank you, Ms. Lee. Any concluding comments? If not, I'll look for a motion to move this item forward. So moved by Vice Mayor Freitas.
Second.
By Councilmember Collazo. Please vote. And that passes unanimously, so thank you very much for that. Before we get to council comments, Assistant City Manager Havorka?
No comments this evening?
Really?
Yes.
Colleagues, I'll start with Councilmember Jorgens. Thank you. Councilmember Collazo.
Thank you, Your Honor. So first of all, I'd like to say thank you to all of staff for the beautiful flowers that I received and the well wishes. Thank you, thank you. And I want to congratulate staff for a very successful State of the City. You did a wonderful job. Staff did a wonderful job closing Thornton Avenue. And you know what? The $5 specials were a very big success. Yes, Morgan, they were. And Emergency Medical Week, a real life example. It's a Friday. It's Fish Friday at the store. I'm at one register. My girl's at the other register. And all of a sudden, I felt like somebody had stabbed me with a knife or scissors and twisting it. Finished my customer, and I went to the office, and I told my husband, I said, honey, I think I'm having a heart attack. Station 28 just ordered fish tacos. They're coming in the door in a few minutes. So as I'm sitting in his office going, he walks to the front of the store, and here comes in Station 28. He says, Susie's having a heart attack. One runs to see me, the other one runs for their medical bag. They called an ambulance, and I was saved. It was my gallbladder. It wasn't a heart attack, but it felt like it was a heart attack. That was one example. The other example was one evening or one middle of the night, my mother fell. Couldn't lift her. She hurt herself. So we called 911. Sure enough, they came in. It's a station from Russian, 27, I think it is, on Russian. And, put my mom in the gurney and took her to Washington, and she was tended to. So I want to thank not only them, but the police department for a wonderful job for always being there when we need them. So, guys, kudos to Emergency Week, to Emergency Medical Weeks for everybody. And last but not least, you know what it is, Shop Newark. So thank you.
We're glad to have you. Councilmember Bucci.
I just want to wish all the moms a very happy Mother's Day, especially my mom who is watching tonight. She likes to watch all the meetings from Sacramento. So happy Mother's Day to my mom. And of course, my wife, because I will be in big trouble if I forget to mention her. So happy Mother's Day to Megan as well.
Vice Mayor Freitas.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. Just this week, I read the news about the Newark population. We building houses everywhere, and was an article about the Newark population decline, about 900 people from last year to this year. It's almost unbelievable to believe this numbers, but it was from 47,000 to 46,000. So 900 people declining the population in Newark. It's not a good news for our population, but anyhow. And secondly, Your Honor, I'd like to congratulate you again on your outdoors State of the City address. Was wonderful. Kudos to staff who pretty much took care of the need to block into was a wonderful event. And I just want to tell you one thing, because on your speech when you presented the council members, and you mentioned Vice Mayor Freitas was been there for 28 years, but let me correct you, because I've been here for 29 years. I won 7 elections, back-to-back elections, but the council in 2013, our city elections was in the odd years, and we voted to be on the even years, so we had a bonus year. So 7 times 4, 28 plus a bonus year. So as a correction for the record. So thank you, Your Honor.
Make sure CalPERS doesn't forget that.
Never a shortage of any humor at this. I want to take a moment to thank a couple of our nonprofits here in the community, and one of them, Councilmember Collazo, you're very instrumental and participate with them. Avanzando, one of our nonprofit organizations, awarded scholarships to students here in our plaza. And I'll certainly be corrected if I'm wrong.
Collazo Plaza?
The Collazo Plaza, from what I'm understanding, you're calling it. But they awarded almost, I think it was $50,000 to about 39 recipients, if I recall correctly. And these are kids that are all going on to really prestigious colleges. And but for the assistance of this organization, a number of them would have had real challenges financially. So real credit to Avanzando for, again, stepping up and awarding scholarships to them. I also want to take a moment to thank the Newark Rotary, because they are going to be awarding $40,000 to local nonprofits as a result of proceeds from last year's crab feed. Again, it's these community-minded organizations that continue to give back to organizations within our city that make it such a great place to live. And then lastly, I do want to also thank all the city staff, Ms. Havorka, for all the fine work they did on the State of the City address. When you're told, when we first discussed closing off Thornton Avenue between Sycamore and Magnolia, I thought, that sounds like a great idea. But then you start to envision in your mind, what if nobody shows up, you know? You're standing up there as the mayor and you're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people. 4 of them are city staff, one's my wife, so and the other person's just lost. It was a good crowd. A lot of great information was provided to our community regarding future improvements to the historic downtown of Newark. The $5 eats, as you mentioned, was really a hit among the folks. It gave a little bit of a shot in the arm to the restaurants. I heard people say, you know, I didn't know about these restaurants here in this part of town and the quality of the food, and I'm certainly going to come back. And that's what it's all about. Expose people to some of the nicer things that we have in our community, and they will come back and participate. But a great event by city staff. A lot of hard work went into that, and we're very appreciative. And I will copy my colleague, Councilmember Bucci, and wish all mothers a happy Mother's Day. My wife and I are proud parents of 7 children, which is probably the result of the reduction in population that you described. But happy Mother's Day to all mothers, all grandparents, all mothers and fathers. We have, you know, combined households sometimes with 2 fathers or 2 mothers. So somebody has to assume that maternal responsibility. And so we thank all mothers for all the hard work that they do day in and day out. And with that, we are adjourned.